The first time I saw him, I almost tripped over my own feet in the middle of the lobby. Of course, the universe decided that introducing me to a man who could intimidate a room with a single glare had to happen when I was carrying 3 cups of lukewarm coffee and my heart was already racing. Julian Hart, my soon-to-be husband by decree rather than desire, looked down at me with that infuriatingly perfect smirk, the kind that made you simultaneously want to punch him and melt into his arms. He was everything I had been warned about, tall, impossibly handsome, his piercing blue eyes scanning every detail of the room and me as though he were weighing my worth with a glance. I, on the other hand, was Nathaniel Reed, a man who had spent most of his life blending into the background, avoiding attention, and convincing myself that life could be predictable and safe. Predictable ended the second the lawyer handed me the marriage papers and Julian leaned down with that smirk, whispering, "I hope you're ready for the ride of your life." The irony was delicious, bitter, and completely unavoidable. My life, previously a quiet rhythm of office cubicles, late-night pizza, and solitary walks along the river, was about to crash into chaos. Julian didn't just walk into my life, he stomped, pirouette, and threw confetti all at once. The wedding itself was a whirlwind. In 1 week, I had moved from skepticism to sheer terror to the faintest spark of curiosity. Julian was meticulous, commanding the room with a presence that bordered on supernatural. The guests whispered about how powerful he was not just in business but in life, in the way people fell in line simply because he entered the room. And yet, when he looked at me during the vows, there was something unexpected. A fleeting vulnerability, a hint that beneath that polished exterior, he might be more human than the world gave him credit for. Our honeymoon was in Napa Valley, and I soon realized that Julian had a side no one else ever saw. There, away from boardrooms and flashing cameras, he was quieter, reflective, even gentle. He had a way of touching the world, of noticing small details, the way the morning fog settled over the vineyards, the way the wineglass caught the sunlight, the way I unconsciously leaned into him when I was nervous. It was unsettling and intoxicating. At night, on the balcony of our suite overlooking endless rows of grapevines, Julian spoke softly. "Do you hate me yet, Nate?" he asked, a teasing lilt in his voice, though his eyes were sincere. I wanted to say yes, to shout at him that everything about this situation was unfair. Instead, I found myself whispering back, "I don't know anymore." The honesty surprised us both. It was the first time the walls between us, the ones built from fear, pride, and obligation, felt like they might crumble. Julian leaned closer, brushing a strand of hair from my face. His touch was light but deliberate, like he was testing the boundaries between us. And for the first time, I didn't pull away. Not entirely. Something in the way he looked at meth blend of desire, patience, and something unspoken made my chest ache and my mind spin. Back in New York, life continued its frenetic pace. Julian's company was expanding, and I found myself attending events I had never imagined I'd be part of. Gala dinners with CEOs, charity balls, and cocktail parties where the air smelled faintly of expensive perfume and champagne. He was always beside me, protective yet challenging, demanding yet surprisingly attuned to my discomfort. One evening, at a charity auction under the glittering lights of a Manhattan ballroom, I nearly lost my nerve when a reporter approached me with a microphone. Julian noticed instantly. He stepped in, his hand brushing mine as he guided me away. That simple contact, so fleeting, yet so intentional, sent shivers down my spine. He whispered in my ear, "You don't have to do anything you're not ready for." His words weren't just comforting, they were revolutionary. For so long, I had lived by the rules of others, obeying expectations, avoiding conflict. But Julian's presence was different. He didn't just command, he included. He didn't just lead, he guided. And slowly, against my better judgment, I began to follow. But it wasn't easy. Julian had a temper that could ignite with a single word, and our arguments were electric, filled with passion, stubbornness, and occasional hurtful truths. Yet even in conflict, there was a magnetic pull between us, a tension that made every reconciliation sweeter and more meaningful. Late nights became our sanctuary. I would find him in his study, the city lights glinting off the glass walls, and we'd talk not about business or obligations, but about dreams, fears, and moments that had shaped us. I learned that beneath the alpha facade was a man who had loved and lost, who feared vulnerability more than failure, and who longed for something genuine amidst the chaos of power. One rainy evening, after a particularly harsh argument about a misunderstanding at a corporate event, Julian found me on the rooftop, staring at the skyline as raindrops dotted my hair. He didn't say anything at first, simply stood beside me, letting the silence speak. Then his hand found mine, not grabbing, not commanding, just holding. And in that moment, the world shifted. The fear, the resentment, the confusion melted into a quiet, profound connection. "Maybe life isn't about control," he murmured. "Maybe it's about letting go and finding someone worth the chaos." I looked at him, soaked and shivering, and realized that I had been looking for him all along, even before I knew his name. The city around us, the neon lights reflecting off the wet streets, became our backdrop, framing the beginning of something neither of us could have anticipated, but both of us desperately needed. Days turned into weeks, and slowly, the tension between us evolved into something softer, warmer. Julian's hand found mine in public without hesitation. Our shared glances spoke volumes. Our arguments ended in laughter or whispered apologies. We were learning to navigate this forced union, transforming it into a deliberate partnership. At first, I feared losing myself in him. But Julian, with all his power and intensity, never tried to consume me. He made space for me to exist alongside him. He challenged me, inspired me, and somehow taught me that being forced into a life could lead to discovering a love I hadn't dared imagine. And while our story had begun with coercion and fear, it was slowly unfolding into something rare, fragile, and breathtakingly beautiful, a bond forged not by obligation but by understanding, desire, and a profound, mutual respect that neither of us expected but both of us craved. The weeks that followed the rooftop moment became a delicate dance of discovery. Every morning, I woke with a strange anticipation, knowing Julian would be there, somewhere in the penthouse that had suddenly become our shared world. Even the way he moved through the space, fluid, deliberate, commanding yet unassuming, made it impossible to ignore him. I remember the day he brought me coffee in bed. The sunlight spilled across the city skyline, turning the skyscrapers into glittering pillars of gold and rose. Julian's presence was overpowering, as always, but today there was no smirk, no teasing undertone. He placed the cup carefully on the nightstand, sat beside me, and simply said, "You deserve this." I wanted to argue, to insist that I could manage my own life, but the sincerity in his eyes left me speechless. There was a weight in his gaze, an honesty that contrasted sharply with the public persona I had been forced to endure. For the first time, I understood that beneath the alpha veneer, Julian was human, capable of tenderness, of thoughtfulness, of care that wasn't performative. Our relationship evolved in quiet increments. We began sharing small rituals, morning coffees together, late-night walks on the rooftop, cooking meals in the kitchen while music played softly in the background. Each act was a rebellion against the chaos that had dominated our first days together, a small assertion of intimacy that neither of us could articulate but both craved. Yet, even in these moments of fragile peace, Julian's intensity was always present. One evening, while preparing dinner, he asked me with that piercing stare, "Do you ever feel trapped, Nate?" I paused, knife hovering over a chopping board. "Trapped? Maybe at first," I admitted cautiously. "But things are different now." He nodded slowly, almost imperceptibly. "Good. I don't want you to feel like a prisoner in my world. I want you to feel like a partner." Partner. The word echoed in my mind, foreign yet thrilling. I realized that what I had feared, the loss of autonomy, the suffocating presence of a man who seemed unstoppable, was being transformed into something entirely new. Julian didn't dominate, he guided. He didn't control, he supported. And in that subtle shift, I found myself letting go of my old fears. Our arguments, which once left me reeling, began to take on a different tone. We still clashed about misunderstandings, about social events, about the relentless demands of Julian's public life, but the aftermath was no longer bitter. There was laughter, reconciliation, and an unspoken agreement that neither of us would allow pride to overshadow the fragile bond we were building. It was during one of these heated arguments that Julian's true vulnerability surfaced. We had a disagreement about attending a gala where the press would scrutinize every move. I was nervous, feeling exposed, while he insisted it was necessary for his work. "You don't understand, Nate," he said, voice tight with frustration. "This isn't about mites about the company, about responsibilities I can't ignore." I felt my chest tighten, torn between wanting to comfort him and resenting the pressure he placed on me. "I get that, Julian," I snapped, more sharply than I intended. "But I'm asking for something too. I'm asking for a little consideration." He looked at me then, really looked as though seeing me for the first time. And in that gaze, there was a flicker of something I had never expected: apology, regret, and a profound, unguarded honesty. "You're right," he whispered, stepping closer. "I've been so focused on the world outside that I forgot the one person who matters most." The tension melted, replaced by a silence heavy with meaning. He took my hand, held it firmly but gently, and for a moment, the city, the obligations, the chaos all fell away. There was only us, two flawed, complex men navigating a bond neither of us had anticipated but both of us desperately needed. As months passed, our lives intertwined further. Julian introduced me to his inner circle friends, colleagues, and family, all of whom treated me with a mixture of curiosity and respect. I discovered that beneath his alpha exterior, Julian had built walls not out of arrogance but out of survival. The man who could command a room with a glance had also been profoundly lonely, afraid of betrayal, of intimacy, of loss. And yet, despite our differences, we found a rhythm. Mornings began with coffee and soft conversation. Afternoons were filled with work and occasional moments of connection. Evenings were ours alone, a sanctuary from the relentless expectations of society. We discovered that love, in its truest form, was not about grand gestures or dramatic declarations. It was about presence, understanding, and the courage to be seen completely, without pretense. One particularly memorable evening, Julian surprised me by taking me to a secluded part of Central Park, far from the city's noise. The autumn leaves crunched beneath our feet, the air crisp and fragrant. He spread a blanket beneath an ancient oak tree and produced a small picnic basket. "I wanted to do something ordinary," he said, smiling softly. "Just you and me. No cameras, no events, no expectations." I laughed, a sound that surprised both of us. "Ordinary? This feels anything but ordinary, Julian." He reached for my hand, entwining our fingers. "Maybe ordinary is relative. Ordinary could mean being with someone who makes you feel safe, who sees you." I felt a warmth in my chest I couldn't name. In that quiet, unassuming moment, the enormity of our journey struck me. We had started as strangers, bound by obligation, thrust into a life neither of us chose. Yet, somehow, through conflicts, misunderstandings, and shared vulnerabilities, we had carved out a space where we belonged, not just beside each other, but with each other. As winter approached, our bond deepened. We celebrated small victories, the completion of challenging projects, successful public appearances, and moments of personal growth. Each triumph, no matter how minor, was sweeter because we shared it. And even when setbacks occurred, we faced them together, our combined strength transforming obstacles into opportunities for connection. One cold evening, Julian suggested we take a drive along the Hudson River. The city skyline sparkled with lights, reflected in the water like 1,000 tiny stars. He parked on a quiet overlook, the hum of traffic distant and muted. "Do you remember our first argument?" he asked suddenly, voice tinged with amusement. I smiled, recalling the intensity, the frustration, and the unexpected tenderness that had followed. "How could I forget? You nearly scared me out of my wits." He laughed, a deep, resonant sound that made my heart thrum. "And now look at us surviving, maybe even thriving." I leaned against him, feeling the solid warmth of his body. I never thought I'd say this, I admitted softly, but I think I'm happy, truly happy. Julian's eyes softened, and he pressed a gentle kiss to my temple. Neither did I, Nate. But sometimes, life surprises us in the best ways. The months turned into a year, and our marriage, once a symbol of coercion, became a testament to resilience, understanding, and love. We navigated the complexities of our respective worlds, balancing public expectations with private desires, and in doing so, discovered a profound intimacy that neither of us had anticipated. Even in moments of challenge, our connection held firm. Julian's protective nature, once intimidating, became a source of comfort. My own quiet strength, once underestimated, became a grounding force for him. Together, we learned that power and vulnerability were not opposites, they were complementary, each enhancing the other in ways that allowed love to flourish. One evening, during a quiet dinner in our apartment, Julian reached across the table and took my hand. I know our start wasn't ideal, he said, but I can't imagine my life without you. You've changed me, Nate. You've made me better. I felt a lump in my throat, emotion threatening to spill over. You've changed me too, I whispered. You taught me that love doesn't have to be forced, it can be chosen, nurtured, and cherished. He smiled, a mixture of pride and vulnerability in his expression. Then let's choose each other every day. No matter what the world throws at us, let's choose Thesis. And in that moment, looking into Julian's eyes, I realized that life, once turned upside down, had found its balance. What began as a forced union had blossomed into a partnership filled with trust, desire, and the quiet joy of two people discovering the beauty of connection. Our love was not perfect, no love ever is, but it was ours, raw and real. And for the first time in my life, I understood that happiness could be found not in control, not in safety, but in the courage to embrace uncertainty and to surrender to the possibility of something extraordinary. The city lights shimmered around us, the Hudson flowing silently beneath the overlook. Julian's hand in mine was steady, warm, and unwavering. And as we sat together, two men bound by circumstance but united by choice, I knew that our journey, once chaotic, terrifying, and uncertain, had led us to a place of profound peace, intimacy, and hope. The world outside continued its relentless pace, but within the walls of our shared life, we had found a rhythm all our own, one defined by trust, laughter, and the gentle, persistent power of love. And as Julian leaned in to kiss me, the chaos of the past felt distant, almost unreal. In its place was something enduring, a connection that neither fear nor obligation could break, a bond forged through adversity and strengthened by the quiet, transformative force of two hearts choosing each other every day. Even in moments of challenge, our connection held firm. Julian's protective nature, once intimidating, became a source of comfort. My own quiet strength, once underestimated, became a grounding force for him. Together, we discovered that love was not about perfection, it was about acceptance, compromise, and the willingness to face the world hand in hand. Spring arrived, painting the city in shades of green and gold, and with it came a renewed sense of possibility. We explored new corners of New York together, from hidden coffee shops to art galleries tucked into quiet streets. Every shared experience, no matter how small, deepened the intimacy between us. Julian would occasionally pause, his gaze softening as he observed me, and I realized that those brief, stolen moments were as vital to him as they were to me. One evening, after a long day of meetings, Julian suggested we visit the rooftop again. The city was alive below us, lights flickering like fireflies in a distant field. He leaned close, his voice low and sincere. Nate, I've been thinking, all of Thesusits more than I ever imagined. And I don't want to lose it. I felt a rush of emotion, my heart thumping as I nodded. I feel the same, Julian. I never expected to be happy like this, but here we are. He smiled, that infuriating yet irresistible smile that had first drawn me into this whirlwind life. Then let's make a promise, he said, taking both my hands in his. No matter what comes, no matter the chaos or the world outside, we protect Thysis. Together. I swallowed hard, the sincerity in his words anchoring me. Together? I echoed, feeling a sense of certainty I had never known before. As the months passed, our relationship became a delicate balance of public appearances and private solace. Julian's world of business and influence never ceased, yet he found ways to carve out moments for us. We celebrated small victories with quiet dinners, shared secrets on long walks through the city streets, and discovered the joy in simply being near one another. There were challenges, of course. The scrutiny of the press, the expectations of society, and Julian's own demanding career often placed strain on us. But we learned to communicate, to negotiate, and to give each other space when needed. Our bond grew stronger not despite the difficulties, but because of them. Every conflict resolved, every misunderstanding addressed, became another thread weaving our lives together. One particularly rainy afternoon, I found myself in Julian's study, watching the city blur behind the windows. He came in, shaking off his coat, and without a word, sat beside me. We shared a silence filled with comfort and understanding. Then softly he spoke. "Nate, I never believed in fate or destiny, but I think I was meant to find you. And now, I can't imagine my life without you." I felt tears prick at the corners of my eyes. "Julian, I feel the same. I never thought I could feel this way, but you've changed everything for me." He leaned in, pressing his forehead to mine. "Then let's not waste another moment doubting it. Let's embrace this our life, our lovefully." We spent the evening wrapped in each other's arms, the rain tapping a gentle rhythm on the windows, a soundtrack to our quiet celebration. In those moments, the outside world ceased to exist. There was no obligation, no expectation, only us, two hearts beating in tandem, discovering the depth of connection that had blossomed from the most unlikely of beginnings. As summer approached, we began planning small adventures beyond the city. Weekend trips to the countryside, vineyard tours, and quiet lakeside retreats became our shared escapes. Julian would drive, his hands occasionally brushing mine, sending sparks that made my chest flutter. Every touch, every look, every whispered word was a reminder that what had begun as a forced union had evolved into something profound and lasting. One evening, during a sunset on a hill overlooking a serene lake, Julian turned to me, eyes glinting with warmth and mischief. "Do you remember how scared we were at first?" he asked, his voice tinged with nostalgia. I laughed softly, leaning into him. "How could I forget? You were terrifying. And yet, here we are." He wrapped an arm around me, pulling me close. "Here we are," he echoed, the words carrying the weight of everything we had endured and overcome. Our love had transformed us both. Julian's intensity was tempered by patience and vulnerability, while my once-hidden strength flourished under his unwavering support. We had learned to navigate life's unpredictability together, turning challenges into opportunities for connection and growth. The turning point came one quiet evening when Julian surprised me with a handwritten letter. He had never been one for overt displays of sentiment, but the letter was filled with reflections on our journey, the moments that had shaped us, and the profound impact I had had on his life. Reading it, I felt a surge of emotion so intense it left me breathless. Later that night, he took my hand, his eyes glistening. "I don't know how to put into words what you mean to me, Nate," he admitted. "But I want to spend every day showing you, proving it, living it." I smiled, feeling a depth of love I had never imagined. "And I want to do the same for you, Julian. We've built something extraordinary together, and I don't want to ever let it go." The city outside our window continued its ceaseless rhythm, but inside, time seemed to slow. We held each other close, hearts synchronized, minds at ease, and for the first time, I understood the true meaning of partnership. Love was not just passion or desire. It was trust, respect, and the courage to face the world together, unafraid. As the months turned into years, our life unfolded in harmony. We faced challenges, celebrated victories, and nurtured the quiet moments that defined our bond. Every glance, touch, and word reinforced the promise we had medito protect, support, and cherish one another. On the anniversary of our first rooftop encounter, Julian led me back to that very spot. The city stretched out below, a tapestry of lights and motion. He turned to me, eyes reflecting the skyline and something far deeper. "Nate, I don't need grand declarations or dramatic gestures. I just need thesis, together, every day." I smiled, my heart full. "And that's all I need too, Julian." He leaned in, kissing me softly. A kiss that spoke of love, understanding, and the countless moments that had brought us here. In that embrace, I felt the culmination of our journey, the transformation from fear and obligation to trust, intimacy, and enduring happiness. Life had turned upside down when Julian entered it, but in the chaos, I had found the greatest gift. Love that was real, tender, and unwavering. And as we stood together, hand in hand, overlooking the city that had witnessed our story, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, we would face them together. Because what had begun as a forced marriage had grown into a love that was our choice. Every single day a love that was ours alone, powerful yet gentle and infinitely beautiful. We turned from the cityscape, walking back toward our penthouse, hearts light, spirits intertwined, ready to face the world as partners, as lovers, as two men who had discovered that sometimes, the most unexpected beginnings lead to the most extraordinary journeys. And in Julian's embrace, I finally understood. Being forced into a life can sometimes lead you exactly where you are meant to be. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.